Hello, and welcome back to another edition of The End Game Insiders on Your Side, a podcast that we develop for senior lab executives, and it's been developed by senior lab executives. My name is Melissa Butterworth, and I am your proud host of the End Game podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, someone who I have known of for the last 30 years, and someone who I've gotten to know much better over the course of the last 6 months. It's just such a pleasure to have her here today. Not only is she an expert at medical billing, but she is also somebody that really understands revenue cycle management and pretty much all aspects of the billing in the lab industry, which is such a hot topic right now. And so without further ado, I would love to welcome you to our podcast, Miss Denise Bennett. Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm just so glad to have you here, Denise. And, our title for the viewers today is From Humble Beginnings to Corporate Success, and now to a position of being able to give back to the lab industry. I just love that. And I can really, really relate with that, Denise. And I'm just so proud to have you here. And before I get started, I always like to give a fun fact about our guest. And I just love this one because I started my lab career in the earlier days with Dynacare, and I know that that's where you also were and where you started your career back in the days. And I
Yes.
understand that you actually did one of your first deals by writing it on the back of a napkin in Seattle when you were working with Dynacare. Is that true?
It is true, Melissa. I literally met the CEO of LabCorp at the time for dinner, and we were talking about the services that I was going to provide and working out a contract. And literally, he grabbed a piece of paper, wrote it down on the back of the napkin, handed it to me, and says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Let's do it."
Ah,
Yeah.
I love that story. And, it goes back to the beginning and how much fun we've had in this industry. And, it really has changed a lot, but it's really very dynamic. And I just love hearing that story because it brings me back to the beginning and just, what a fun ride. And again, I'm so happy to have you here. I think a great way to get started would be to have you kind of take us back a little bit and share with us and the viewers a little bit more about the last 30 years of your career, and what it is that you've actually been doing in the lab industry.
Yes, for sure. First, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast. I have the utmost respect and admiration for you and your journey that I'm honored, simply honored to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so how did I get into this business? Well, 30 years ago, after working for a billing service for approximately 3 years, I decided to start medical billing and then later medical billing and lab consulting services. This provided me with the opportunity to immerse myself into every aspect of the industry. I started working for independent physicians, doing their billing, accounts receivable cleanup in some cases. And during this process, I uncovered that there definitely was a need for helping clients improve their AR collection rate and increase their revenue.
Very interesting. So I didn't realize that you had actually been involved in all aspects, including like the physician office side of it. So you've probably seen a lot, I would imagine.
Yes, I mean, from like pediatricians to psychiatrists to just every level of physician billing that I could get myself into. And one of my very first large account, which to me is pretty interesting, I drove around to multiple urgent care centers, whom there was 9 of them, who had been recently acquired by multi-care health systems. And I literally picked up their main computer at each location and boxes of files, brought them to my home office, and I did the cleanup of the AR on those independent computer systems as they were integrating into the mainframe billing system for multi-care.
Wow. That
I do have
is
to say, this was way before HIPAA.
Wow, that's pretty unbelievable. Wow, so you've really got a lot of incredible experience, and I understand like you spent a lot of time working for one of the larger national labs, and then you've recently started your own billing and consulting services. And the name of your billing and consulting services, just for our viewers, is Medical Billing and Lab Consulting Services. That's pretty easy to remember, but I think that's Yeah, I think that's great, Denise, because I think that with your background and your perspective, if and we personally have a lot of clients that are looking to clean up their AR. And when you get involved with mergers and acquisitions, as you know, it's so important that the AR is cleaned up. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. I mean, if a laboratory is looking to be acquired, why is it so important to have their AR in order and cleaned up?
Okay, so that's a great question. You don't want to leave money on the table. If you don't clean up your accounts receivable before a merger or acquisition, you're essentially leaving money on the table, along with potentially losing the potential value and the overall valuation of the deal. I like to say we need to dig in and tame that claim, meaning we have to get a handle on the outstanding accounts receivable and ensure that everything is accounted for and optimized to the max potential.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. We're often able to negotiate for our clients for them to be able to keep the outstanding accounts receivables. But I do think it's critical that they get that cleaned up before. And if they can't, worst case scenario, they certainly want to consider, if it's been negotiated for them to keep their accounts receivable, bringing in a company like yours, Denise, to be able to come in and help them collect as most as possible so that they don't leave that money on the table. So that's a really, really good point. What are the steps that are necessary for a successful AR cleanup?
Okay, so the first step in the process is the assessment. It's absolutely critical that we get in there as soon as possible because, as we know in revenue cycle management, we're always up against the clock with the strict timely filing guidelines, getting claims paid, and any delays can mean lost revenue. A thorough assessment early on means we can triage the claims, identify which ones need immediate action, and avoid having valuable revenue slip through the cracks during the merger acquisition process. In essence, I guess AR cleanup is about maximizing every dollar and ensuring the financial health of both organizations going into the merger and or acquisition. A fun fact, not knowing it, but prior to LabCorp acquiring Dynacare, I led that team that created and maintained the healthy accounts receivable prior to that acquisition.
Oh, wow. Wow,
Yeah, so
I bet that was pretty substantial undertaking.
it really was, and it was interesting after we found out that Dynacare was being acquired by LabCorp that the healthy accounts receivable obviously really helped with that sale.
Oh, of course. That I did
And
not know that. That's impressive.
yeah, yeah, and I would also like to add to that that we start with a detailed transaction history that includes every claim, its status, any denials or outstanding issues with the data in hand. Then I can conduct an intensive analysis, triage the claims, and prioritize which ones we need to tackle first based on their value, age, and filing deadlines to get that AR really healthy.
Yeah.
And that can take several weeks to be thorough. So it's really critical to start immediately. And then once the assessment's done, I like to say that's when the real fun begins because we get to roll up our sleeves, get those claims in order, maximize revenue recovery, and ensure the client that nothing will be left on the table to the best of our ability.
Wow. No, it's quite a process, I know. I'm kind of curious from my perspective and for our viewers' perspective. I mean, how long does it take to like clean up, somebody's outstanding AR? I mean, I know it has a lot of like big question marks. It depends, I'm sure, but like on average, is there like a time frame, like, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months?
I like to say 9 to 12 months. And again, it does, like you said, there's a lot of situations that arise or depending on the size of the AR, depending on the type of, if it's a specialty lab versus, that requires a lot of appeals, that sort of thing. If there's a lot of refunds that have to be done, there's so many aspects to it. But once you dig in and assess what it is, and especially with timely filing limits, I think to get it very clean and cleaned up to the max potential is anywhere from 9 to 12 months.
Okay, that makes sense. You know, it's ironic because that is about the average that it takes to do a typical transaction. That is why we sometimes have clients that we're working with anywhere from a year to 2 years before they go to the market, because this is just an example of one area that we like to go in and make sure that it is cleaned up before we take them to the market. So this helps them understand that it's just not a matter of, hey, we've decided to go to the market, sell our lab, and then boom, we're out to the market, right? It's a process. So I appreciate you explaining that. Denise, I know that compliance is such a major part in revenue cycle management, right? It's a huge part of it, and I'd love for you to be able to share a story, maybe of how it is important and what you've experienced.
Yes, compliance in my mind is like compliance in revenue cycle management is like the rule book in a game. If you don't know the rules, you can't play the game. And you definitely won't win if you aren't compliant. So it's about making sure, in my mind, every single claim you submit is accurate, follows the regulations, so that you can avoid any reasons for denial. Again, we're taming that claim to make sure that it behaves itself all the way to payment. One thing I can think of is several years ago, I worked with a team that was struggling with denied claims. They had millions of dollars in denied claims. So we dug in, we found out the problem was with coding. They were using outdated codes. So within a few short months, we managed to crosswalk to the updated codes, and we recovered a substantial amount of money for them that was just sitting there. And honestly, it took knowing the rules of the game and sticking to them. So
Wow.
compliance isn't just about, in my mind, it's not just about avoiding penalties. It's about ensuring that every claim is clean and that we're going to be paid and paid accurately.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. No, thank you for sharing that. As an expert and leader in revenue cycle management, and with the combination of AI, how do you see AI impacting revenue cycle management, or do you?
It's AI is the buzzword right now, and it is an important question. I think of AI right now in RCM and revenue cycle management as being at the stage kind of where the Wright brothers were with their first flights. It's exciting, but there's so much growth and refinement, so many things that we need to train the data in order for it to be effective. It's in its infancy kind of still, and I believe it holds great potential. The reality is, in my mind, that AI hasn't been trained significantly in the nuances and complexities of RCM. And to look at a client today, we need collections, and experience counts for so much. I just don't think it's mature enough to replace the deep industry knowledge and expertise that seasoned professionals bring to the table. I think it's going to take a lot more time and a lot of data to make a meaningful difference in RCM.
Denise, I can actually see you inventing that. I mean
It
it.
would be fun.
I mean, you're like
Um,
the godmother of billing and revenue cycle
um,
management, and you really are. I have so much admiration for you, and I'd
Thank
love
you.
to hear, like, so what's next for you? Like, where are you going from here? And share with the audience if they want to get in touch with you, and what are you looking to do? I know you've had incredible success in the corporate world, and now you're in a spot where you're ready to give back. You've got your own company. What's next?
Well, so to kind of to summarize that, 27 years, I literally got to work with and for the largest lab, one of the largest labs in the country. So I've gained such amazing relationships and friendships with people in the lab industry. As you know, it's a very small world and a big world. And so I feel so honored and blessed that I literally had that corporate knowledge. And so basically, I like to sum it up by I come from humble beginnings where I learned the value of hard work, perseverance, and I had to find creative solutions for challenging problems. I carried those lessons with me into the corporate world where I've had the absolute privilege of building a successful career and in gaining invaluable experience in revenue cycle management. Now I've come full circle and I'm back on the market. I'm eager to share this knowledge and give back to the industry that helped shape me into who I am today.
In a lot of ways, Denise, it reminds me of kind of my track in the lab world where I started off, with hospital outreach. Then I went to Dynacare where you and I both kind of really formed our careers, right? And then worked for one of the larger national labs and then went off on my own, similar to what you're doing, because I really felt like my place was representing the smaller laboratories, small to mid-sized laboratories, to be able to help them with all the knowledge that I'd gained along my journey. So I see you as doing the same thing. And I'm just so proud of you, so excited. And I just know you're going to do some amazing things. If anybody that's listening today would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach you, Denise?
Well, thank you, Melissa. Yes, my contact information, my email is mbs1990.mbs@outlook.com. And my cell phone is 253-370-2962. I'm also on LinkedIn as well under Denise Bennett.
So, if anybody that's been listening today did not catch that information or would like to re listen to today's podcast, we do post all of them at our website at www.advancedstrategicpartnerswithan.com, or you can always tune in on Spotify, Apple, and now YouTube. So, today has been absolutely wonderful. If you would like to go back and re listen to this, please feel free to do so. And Denise, thank you so much for coming and being our guest today. And for all of our guests, I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks on the End Game. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Melissa.